post-war America, and on the West Coast, California, where if a thing's worth doing, it's worth doing to excess. The number of young studs competing in the traffic light Grand Prix swelled to such an extent that it started to get organised. It became apparent that the game had to be taken off the streets and out onto purpose-built racetracks. The modern-day drag strips were born. Drag race cars look the way they do basically because they have to. Street rods look much the same as drag racers because their owners want them to look that way. And that's because they both share the same parentage and a common background. Away from the strip, the builders of these early street-driven hot rods worked with graceful, full-fendered cars like Ford's Model T, Model A and the Model B. They refined their hobby to such a degree that it became a sport. The sport became a science, and the cars became an art form. Using for material the plentiful supply of pre-war cars rotting in every scrapyard across America, the hot rodders' first task was to junk everything which wasn't vital to the cause of higher speed. During this process, fenders, windscreens and large chunks of bodywork were simply thrown away. Only after that were the performance parts added to the engine, the suspension and so on. They were creating by accident the now traditional style of the hot rod. Huge rear tyres, small spindly front wheels and a monster engine. Because those early racers used their cars on the strip at weekends and on the road the rest of the time, their appearance was eventually copied for its own sake. Hence the street rod, a car which looks like a race car, but it isn't. In fact, the street rod is usually a whole lot prettier. It's frighteningly expensive and may well have taken 2 or 3 years to build. Nobody still in possession of all their marbles would take anything that unique anywhere near something as dangerous as motor racing. But all this evolutionary number was happening back in the late 40s and early 50s. And an awful lot has happened since then, even in rodding. As well as developing into new styles like the lowrider or the street custom, rodding also crossed the Atlantic in the early 70s. And now you can find it parked on the corner of the street where you live. Rodding has certainly found its way down the street where professional car builder Ray Christopher lives. Ray's been building street rods and things for a number of years now. He's produced some real show-stopping vehicles.
This is the vehicle that's given me most pleasure in building. It's a 1908 Model T. To produce a vehicle of this stature and this age, you have to go to a reference library to find out the particular sizes that the car will be built in. It takes approximately 3 months to get all the information together to produce a sort of vehicle like this. We would spend another 2 to 3 months on the drawing board getting the whole business together just to get the car to look right or authentic. On other cars that we've built, obviously we don't have to go back to this sort of information, but on this one, basically I wanted the car to be produced that it looked just like the original 1908 Model T. So, on to the other parts of the car. Firstly, we'll start with the chassis. This is of 3x-inch box steel construction, and then we go on to the solid drawn tube on the bottom. This makes the whole front suspension very, very stiff. Now, the type of suspension we've put on this car is the wishbone with coilover shock, giving us a total independent suspension. We need this because we want to run on modern roads. Obviously, the original car didn't have this type of suspension on it, and it couldn't run on our type of roads now. It would give major problems. Next we have the brass. This obviously you cannot purchase now. Like all custom car stuff, you have to, or the owner has to make it himself. Now this is made from 18 gauge brass. The lights are spun and this is all handmade. The only thing that isn't handmade is the motor meter on the top. Wheels and tyres. These are an essential part of the custom car. Normally the wheels would be of mag alley construction or chromed. The body on this vehicle is hand-formed from sheet steel. This is where your detail to drawing comes in. We have to, all of us customizers, get our cars looking as near to the original as we possibly can. This is a 2000 Pinto motor. It's 4 cylinders. I would have preferred to put in a V8 motor, but being restricted for room, we just could not get a V8 engine in it. Now, normally the customizer would love to use a V8 engine, and normally does. This gives the car an aesthetic value and really sets the car off apart from others. On this point, if you can imagine this car going down the motorway and really passing every other thing, it gives a lot of people a lot of shocks just to see a car looking this old, running this fast. Upholstery. Now, this is really down to the individual's taste. It can be done in leather cloth, draylons, velvets. It can be stitched, upholstered, but basically this one is down to buttoned and tucked leather cloth. Well, Pete, I feel we're going to have to put a gusset in this piece.
Once you have the working drawings, you've got to get out in the workshop and nail it all together.
How long have we been doing this darn thing now?
January, I think we started.
January? Gosh, it's like an eternity. But you feel the gusset should be okay?
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yeah, go on.
Mind your eyes then.
Well, it's at this point that everyone who wants to build a car from scratch, restore an old one, or substantially alter the appearance of a modern one has to come to a screeching halt and think. The only way to do it is to learn some, if not all, of the crafts of those original tradesmen who built cars by hand half a century ago. So it's out with the Teach Yourself books, off to night school, and round to your mate's house to learn woodwork, machining, upholstery, and welding before you ever begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Not everybody has a professionally equipped workshop like this. Not everybody has the money to pay a professional to do the difficult bits. And not everybody who has to work in a cold and lonely garage late at night gets it right first time. The enthusiast needs endless patience, working on a lump of metal that only gradually begins to look like a car.
Well, Pete, if we pon this in, get this edge looking nice, the bonnet line comes up through there, and we'll have to get this really looking the business so it looks really nice. And fill up here. What do you feel about that? How much do you think we want on?
Well, a few thou.
Well, really, yeah.
All right, I'll leave you to get on with it.
So I'll finish this bit off and then we'll carry on with that other job later on. Okay.
Probably the least glamorous and most arduous task of all is preparing the car body for painting. It's a continual repetition of filling and sanding off, then filling again and finishing until the body's completely smooth. It's a process which is a great deal harder, a great deal longer, and far more dispiriting than anyone who hasn't done it can believe. When you think it's finished, it probably isn't. It could look okay from a distance, but there are usually thousands of small imperfections which have to be removed if you don't want to ruin the finished paintwork.
Just to make it just on the edge and then we'll clean them up later on. Okay.
Finally, you apply a mixture of paint types and colours, smooth the whole thing down between coats, not forgetting, of course, those numerous coats of clear lacquer. If you still haven't had enough, there's plenty of scope for the artist in you to come to the surface. And finally, this is where it all pays off. The hours, weeks, even years of painstaking labour just to get your car out on the road. That's what it's really all about. Rather than just tamely walking into a dealer's showroom, you invest time and effort in return for a car that not even the Joneses can keep up with.
travel round this running road. So you got mean machine.
Oh, these cruising freaks. They go out together. They meet in clubs, pubs and motel car parks, chatting over the details of their cars, swapping rather tall stories about the work involved and poring curiously over each newcomer.
How long did it take you to do the car?
About a year of evenings, weekends, a lot of hard work. It's been tried to make look like a standard American car.
It's really good. It really looks the business. Nice.
No, you should take that up. I like this pool. How long did it take you to do this one?
Well, we were on holiday for 2 weeks and his mate Gary here decided we thought change it for a little, sort of make it look a bit meaner on the road. Yeah, it's the same as my car. That was using badger brush. It's very good.
Well, they're the best, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, yeah.
Well, basically it's a XJ6 and I've altered all the bodywork on it. Basically the roof, around the boot area is most of it. So I've sectioned the roof, moved it forward, put a bigger boot lid on it.
You've done a lot inside too? You've
That's
changed
right.
the seats?
That's right. The wife done most of that. As I say, we don't believe in spending too much money elsewhere, so we do it all ourselves.
The body's a copy of a Model T Ford, and the style of the car is based on a 1940s style American dirt track racer.
And it's also got a flip body.
A flip body?
Yeah.
Well, this is worth a look. Yeah.
Dirty.
What's the engine, John?
That's out of a Rover 3.5,
Right.
around about 1972.
Plymouth body,
Yeah. Steel or glass fibre?
Fiberglass.
Yeah. And what's the running gear on it now?
Austin Westminster, the axles and the engine.
Yeah. Is it running nicely?
Yeah, it runs like a dream.
If your car's really one of the top-class vehicles in the country, you could well find yourself travelling miles from home to one of the great custom car shows. After all, one of the main purposes of building and owning custom cars is to get together and show them off publicly. And some of the chassis at this particular show are really quite well put together. Enthusiasts gather to display their cars to all and sundry and accept the judgments of their peers in a sort of mechanical beauty contest. This is a chance to stare and marvel at cars you may never have seen the like of before, in a room swamped with chrome-plated dreams. All the while, these people are talking about cars, more cars still, and bikes, other people's and their own. As they mill around there, let me just show you something a little special. This has got to be the loudest pink Volvo you're ever going to see. The roof's been chopped up and literally thrown away, and the whole car's been lowered about 5 inches. It's interesting to note that apart from being technically brilliant, it's also devastatingly pink. Now take the Helicar, a stunning piece of chrome-plated fantasy, a bubble with a difference. Here's motoring journalist extraordinaire Richard Nichols.
Well, I've walked round the show today and I've been trying to find something that would typify exactly what's been going on here today. Now, we've had a look at the Helicar, which is a completely outrageous and over-the-top customising job of something that was a helicopter to begin with and a truck now. And we've looked at the interior of that beautiful pink Volvo, which is all hand-embroidered and not the sort of thing that you would want to sit on, never mind drive to the chip shop or have your takeaways in after the cinema. And we've ended up here with the Ford Pop, which is British Rodding's set piece. It's a classic shape and a classic looking car, which most people will recognise and therefore understand that things here are not as they used to be. Certainly not in Henry's day. When you start on a car, the first thing you can do to it is change the wheels. It's a very, very easy job to do, and it makes the most dramatic improvement. If you have a dirty car, a Ford Escort or whatever it is, and just wash the wheels, it looks 10 times better. So putting a set of chrome wheels on a Ford Pop or any other car will make it immensely more attractive. So that's the first place that everybody starts. Ground up, we will change the wheels, we will put something chromy and shiny on, and we'll make it look a bit special. And from there on, the sky's the limit. Now, the Pop here has been radically changed. The chassis has been beautifully reworked and strengthened to take the power of the new engine, and it's been hand-painted to the same standard as the rest of the bodywork. The suspension's been finely chromed and detailed. The engineering is excellent. The detailing is superb. The engine, and that too has been taken to pieces, lovingly rebuilt to give the sort of performance that you'd expect from a modern road-going car, and also look good. So the interior has been rebuilt to a high standard, so what you end up with is something that looks really attractive but still pulls the car around the streets.
This is all part of that great American heritage from the 50s, and the styles and shapes you see here are the ones born and bred on the street and strips of the West Coast. Somewhere here you're bound to find everything from the Beach Boys' little Deuce Coupe right down to these gleaming moon discs. Tucked away somewhere in the corner behind the vans, the low riders are lurking. The dream, the vision, the language, they're all American. It's at shows like this that the very best that there is to offer is gathered together under one roof in a staggering variety of shapes and sizes. For instance, take a little glance at this V12 engine Model T. Extravagance like this was never dreamed of in the Ford factory at the beginning of the century. And as Sam Goldwyn might have said, if Henry Ford were alive today, he'd turn in his grave. There are Cortinas that no one at Ford's would ever recognise as one of their own. And as for this Morris Minor, well, any self-respecting district nurse would probably slap a poultice on it. Now, something a little unusual for you, a Mini with a difference. Well, a lot of the British flavour there, but apart from that, of course, the show's got loads of car styles of the classic street rods, the Californian style. There's a distinct tendency to look around and wonder whether anyone knows what it's all about. This fella here, being asked a question by the young child, obviously knows the answers, but he considers it just a little too technical to tell the kid about.
Hello. You're now looking at a truck as opposed to cars and motorcycles and things. Makes a change. What you're looking at now is a Scammell 1968 Highwayman, ex-fairground tow truck. Came to me from a customer, offered at a very, very silly price, had to take it, and hence you see what you see. Started out, ripped the whole thing to pieces, and generally built it up bolt by bolt. Paintwork is metal flake, silver global with candies. Reason for doing it now, just to be different. Fed up with cars, so we've gone on to a truck and hopefully won a little bit better than the average one you see in the street. The wife, not too keen on it. I think she put a brick through the screen if she could.
Could this possibly be cruelty to dumb fish?
I'm Kenny Mccallum. I'm from Glasgow. And up in Glasgow there's not very much customised cars about. So 3 years ago I decided to put it off the road and tidy it up a bit. It was off the road for 2 years. We slung in a Ford Essex V6 engine. There's a total of about 1,500 quid's worth of chrome plating on the whole car. The inside of the engine is tidy as the outside engine and it performs very well. The paintwork is it's a mixture of indigo blue global and mirror flake, chosen mainly because it's a very forgiving type of paint, and because I hadn't done much painting before, we thought if we're going to make mistakes, then we might be able to hide them a bit better using this type of paint. From there we went to the interior of the car. The interior of the car is kitted out in 37 yards, deep buttoned rail-on velvet. There's a cocktail bar, television set, telephone, quadraphonic cassette. The back axle's been changed round, a lot of chrome work underneath that as well. I try to get to as many shows as possible. The trouble is in Scotland there's nothing at all to go to.
It's a 1967 Mercury Cougar. Bought it 2 years ago in a sorry state. doors were hanging off, no brakes, engine was no good, quite a few things wrong with it. We spent quite a bit of time and a lot of money, replaced the engine with a full raced engine, lots of mechanical work, and of course the body work was stripped all back to bare metal and plated and made nice up to this standard. There's not many of these cars in the country. That's one of the reasons why I picked on this car, and this is what it turns out. It's basically a Ford yellow with various different colours, with plenty of lacquer over the top, and just plenty of chrome and lots of hard work keeping it clean.
Only a small handful of people will win awards. In return for their several years of hard labour, the favoured few win a chrome-plated cup and enough cash for a couple of bottles of high-class bubbly to celebrate. So why do they all bother? Well, if it's not for the money, then it can only be for the fame.
It'll come back a bit as the jack goes up.
Well, that's okay, as long as you can get it in.
Next to taking a big show award, a photo session for a centre spread in one of the top magazines has to be one of the highest accolades going. There's no doubt at all that Heli's very tasty. And the car's pretty nice too.
Now try it over the engine.
11.5.
11.5. Try it right down the front. Back a bit. Yeah. Okay. So I reckon we ought to, if we can, concentrate on the bit of most importance, apart from Heli, which is the engine. Yeah?
Yeah, but be careful, because if you come up from the bottom, you're just going to get a foreshortening effect on Heli. And you're not going to get very much at all.
Well,
I think probably rather more square on, actually.
Yeah.
Almost straight in, slightly low, but not down from the floor.
Yeah, I think, in fact, if we take it round about through there, so halfway through the radiator.
If you shoot through the badge,
with Heli coming in, can you just move in a bit? Yeah.
That's it.
Something like that.
Probably just that, if you can.
Yeah, so if you just crop it sort of like over there.
Frame it down by
here.
the exhaust pipes.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room for the logo. We can work it through from there.
All right. Can't see your face at all. Turn your face. Yeah. Turn your head a bit. Bit more. Yeah.
So basically the car is a 23T, but it's been lowered over the chassis, and it has a 428 Pontiac engine in it with a supercharger on the top, which makes it rather quick. It isn't exactly road tractable, but it's not being built for that purpose. It's a sort of street strip vehicle.
So is it going to run on the strip or what?
Yeah, the idea is to run it on the strip, but it's a combination of the two, really. It's not an out-and-out drag racer, but it does do quick times. Or
without fenders or windscreen wipers or anything like that, it's not going to be street legal anyway, is it?
No, not at this stage. It would take a little bit of work to get it to be street legal.
So you're going to run it on the strip sometime next year?
Yeah, that's the idea.
And what sort of times are we going to be looking for?
Well, potentially high eights.
High eights?
Yeah,
so
that's what we feel.
Who is going to drive it?
Well, I think Pip's going to drive it.
He's the only one that can get in, right?
Well, he's got...
I mean, where does he keep the shoehorn?
Well, it helps with the roof coming up, doesn't it?
Sure. That doesn't lift when it's driving along, there's no...
It locks down, which is really nice, you know. And,
You've developed a friend. Good evening, man.
Well, that can't be right.
We're trying to be serious here.
There are times when you could be forgiven for thinking that nobody's really interested in the mechanical details. Cars like this are not just for pretty pictures. They do mean business. And the name of that game is drag racing. This is a fantastically sophisticated version of the Californian traffic light Grand Prix which started the whole thing off. Instead of stripped-down hot rods, the racing is between purpose-built race cars. The action isn't confined to four wheels, and the bike racers are tough and fast competitors in their own right. The start line sequence is all important. When both cars have their front wheels precisely on the start of the quarter, the lights go green and they're off. Each race is between two cars sitting in separate lanes at the beginning of a measured quarter of a mile. The first car to reach the other end is the winner. There's no second place. Dramatic smoky burnouts warm up the tyres to improve traction. To help it along even further, a sticky traction compound is poured onto the tyres, because with all that horsepower going onto the ground in one lump, cars can reach 100 miles an hour from standstill in about a second. The slightest error or momentary loss of concentration can have quite dramatic results. Sometimes a swerve off the start line can be controlled. Occasionally, a swerve can reappear halfway down the strip, usually at a most inconvenient moment. And even if everything goes as it should do, a good hard 200+ miles an hour run can be a frightening experience, though it only lasts a few seconds. Cars have already been divided into groups, so the smaller vehicles won't have to race against the more powerful ones. Each class will race in 8 pairs. At the end of these sudden death eliminations, a single pair will race to decide the overall winner.
Okay, is the car running well? I hope so. In fact, we haven't been racing since last month, or that's 2 months ago, but we did well then, and we hope we're going to do well again.
Nice to see you back with us again. Lee, I know you want to get back and get strapped in the car. Good luck to you. See you later.
Actually, this is slow motion, but it's really 150 miles an hour on double-engine supercharged screamers, or stripped-down versions of ordinary road-going machines with equally stunning acceleration. At lunchtime, the race officials take a break, and the vast numbers of spectators enjoy a different sort of entertainment. While the aerobatic teams do their stuff in the air, everybody on the ground is drawing a deep breath ready for the afternoon's finals. There's no break for the racers at lunchtime. With only about 3 moving parts, the big jet-powered cars don't have that many problems. Comparative newcomers to the drag strip. Their rather spectacular form of propulsion has proved to be a definite, if slightly non-traditional, crowd pleaser. Far closer to the hearts of the real enthusiasts are the middle bracket cars racing in modified or competition altered. The close relationship between these racers and the street-driven rods at the cruises and the custom car shows is clearly evident. They've always been a crowd puller, probably because most spectators can actually wish themselves into the driving seat. Through the day, racers who still have a place in competition strip their engines down, check them, and prepare them for the next round. On the strip, the other classes battle through their eliminations. Stopping cars like this is always a problem and can often take longer than accelerating to 200 miles per hour. Ordinary brakes would never stand up to it, and they'd add too much weight to the car anyway. All cars capable of more than 150 miles an hour must be fitted with a parachute so they can stop before they go into orbit. Understandably, a great deal of attention is paid to proper packing of parachutes before the cars leave the pits.
Well, we'll see Richard Walter leads the line 3 seconds before the run, turning to step down the lane.
In the bustle and hurry of the pits, surrounded by gleaming machinery, hard-working mechanics, and of course the inevitable pretty girls, it's hard not to feel closely involved with the sort of holiday atmosphere of the meeting.
For many, many years. Someone's going through there.
Out on the strip, there's a special piece of extra entertainment. Lady racer Roz Pryor is preparing to warm up the crowds with a record-breaking run in her Hellbender jet car.
Simon, it looks like I'll have to do it on my own. Will you join me in the countdown when he's ready?
Veteran American drag racer Sammy Miller prepares to light the strip up with his rocket-powered funny car Vanishing Point. It burns, incidentally, 99% pure hydrogen peroxide in a rocket, so you don't get too close unless you prefer being a blonde. Vanishing Point puts in a 3-second run, and in case you blinked, here it is again. Well, is it crazy or is it beautiful?